We all think we know the story of Joan of Arc, right? The saint in that shining armor. But what if the story of hymns and halos that we've all been told is really just the beginning? What if the real Joan was less of a saint and way more of a threat?
And this really gets to the heart of it. On one side, you've got the myth, saint, martyr, visionary. It's clean, it's holy, it's safe. But then you look at the reality, a commander, a brilliant strategist, and to the people in power, she was incredibly dangerous. That's the story we're going to dig into today. All right, so first, let's start with the Joan of Arc we're all familiar with. You know, the figure that history has kind of polished up and placed very carefully on a pedestal. Yeah, this is the popular image, isn't it? The patron saint of France, a teenage girl literally chosen by God, the ultimate virgin martyr. Her whole story has been sanitized, canonized, and turned into this beautiful tale of hymns and halos. And look, it's a powerful and inspiring story for sure, but it is not the whole picture, not even close. Because when you start to chip away at that polished image, you find something else entirely, something way more complicated. Beneath all the hymns and halos is a radically political story, one about power, defiance, and a girl who refused to be quiet, to obey, or to break. So how in the world did she become this unbelievable figure? To get that, we've got to look at where she came from and just how fast she managed to change, well, everything. I mean, just look at this timeline. It's breathtaking. At age 13, she's a peasant girl in a small village claiming she hears divine voices. Okay. By 17, just 4 years later, she has somehow walked into the royal court, convinced battle-hardened nobles to give her an entire army, and then she leads them to a massive victory. And by 19, it is all over. Captured, tried, and executed. Her entire public life just burned like a flash for only 2 years. It's insane. And this is maybe the most crucial thing to understand about that short, explosive career. She was not just some mascot or a good luck charm for the army. No way. I love how one source puts it. Joan was not a pawn. She was a commander, strategist, and symbol. And that made her dangerous. She wasn't just out there inspiring the troops from the sidelines. She was making battlefield decisions. She was planning attacks. This level of agency in a teenage girl was basically unheard of, and it is exactly what made her so threatening to the establishment. You know, her defiance wasn't just on the battlefield. Every single choice she made was a political statement. Wearing men's armor and cutting her hair short, that wasn't just about being practical for a fight. It was a public rejection of the role she was supposed to play as a woman. She spoke with fire. She debated theology and military strategy with these powerful men who expected women to be totally silent. Every one of these acts was another crack in the foundation of their power. So it's no surprise that when she was finally captured by her enemies, her trial was never, ever really about God. It was about power. Plain and simple. This quote just nails it. She was burned not because her visions were false, but because her voice was loud. See, it was never really about heresy. It was because her influence was too big, and her example was just too dangerous to the men in charge. She had to be silenced. And if you actually look at the trial records, it is fascinating. They barely even talked about her military victories. Instead, they obsessed over her clothes, her hair, her refusal to be feminine in the way they demanded. Her real crime in their eyes was her complete and utter refusal to conform. 19. She was just 19 years old when they burned her at the stake. Just let that sink in for a moment. All of this, the visions, the victories, the trial, it all happened before she was even 20.
But here's the thing. Her story doesn't end with her death. Her legacy isn't one of a passive victim. It's one of active, burning defiance.
This is the spirit that has lasted for centuries. Her rage against the occupation of her country was seen as righteous. Her fire to fight was absolutely contagious, inspiring a whole nation. And even during a show trial designed to humiliate her, she refused to break. And that brings us to this really powerful idea, calling her a woman of chaos. Now, that doesn't mean chaos as in destruction. It means chaos as in the disruption of an unjust system. She did the one thing the men in power feared the most. She led. And she did it in her own name and completely on her own terms. So this whole thing leaves us with a really critical question. What happens when history retells a story? Well, a radical, dangerous figure can be softened, made safe, and turned into a saint on a pedestal. But the real story, the strategist, the commander, the dangerous girl who refused to be silent, that story is not only more interesting, it's often far more powerful. And it kind of makes you wonder, right? What other stories have been polished up for our own protection?